In this video, I am going to give a quick overview of the Sandbox environment at the University of Cincinnati and some of the tools that you can use to manage your virtual machine. First of all, take a look at this document called sandboxtraining.docx. I'll put this up on Blackboard, but this contains a lot of very important instructions, including the URL for Sandbox, the domain to choose, and then you simply log in with your normal 6+2 Bearcat ID and central login service password. There are some instructions here on what a student will do and also what a teacher will do to access the VM. I'll walk through several of those steps, but I will say this is a relatively fresh document, so it's likely to change, and it's likely to change from our CECH IT department. If there is a change, that change will supersede anything that I say in this video. If you do have any trouble accessing the virtual machine or anything else related to the virtual machine, note the CECH IT Help Desk phone and email. They can get you routed to the right person for the virtual machine. So first of all, let's go ahead and take this URL here and log in. We recommend Firefox. Sometimes it will work in Chrome, but sometimes you'll sit there and the wheels will spin forever and you'll never be able to log in. So if you're having trouble with Chrome, we recommend you just switch to Firefox. So I go ahead and I'll re-enter this URL here. And note the domain for me is pre-selected, but I've changed it. I selected mine earlier. You'll likely see a drop-down box. Simply choose ad.uc.edu. So now I'm going to put in my 6+2 and my super secret, super secure password. And I'm going to put in sign in. And we're ready to go. Okay, from here let's follow the instructions, and one caveat, your view will be a little different than mine. I'm having the professor view and you're going to have the student view, so you might see some options on mine that you don't see on your own view. Okay, first time accessing the class, we go to Menu Catalog, see all the courses that you have access to, and click the Courses Request button. So we go to Menu, and then we choose the Catalog, and sure enough you see here is IT 4045, and then we press the Request button. Okay, this is where we can request a new virtual machine, and you see I have one that I had created earlier, but nonetheless there's a template here that's provided for us. These items here have been pre-selected by the administrator, and they're my recommended settings from having taught this course before. 3 CPUs gives us the horsepower we need, which is quite a bit. 8 gigs of memory, 64 gigs of storage will be plenty for our class. Very important, give this a machine name with your Bearcat ID. So for me it would be JonesBR. If you want to call it JonesBR and something else like 4045, that's fine. But just start it with your Bearcat ID. Reason being, if I need to remote in and see your virtual machine, it's going to help me a lot if I'm looking by your Bearcat ID and not if I'm looking at 38 virtual machines that are called 4045 or Enterprise App Development or anything of that nature. So really that's all you have to do. Everything else here is pretty much pre-configured for you. One important note though, when you're all finished, hit Submit, not Save. And preferably not cancel unless you want to cancel out. Save doesn't actually submit this request for a new VM. It just saves it, and then you have to go find it later. Submit actually submits the request for a new virtual machine. It will take about 5 minutes to create this virtual machine. I have already created one, so I'm not going to hit submit here. But let's say you want to check the status of the virtual machine. What we want to do is go to Requests, and then click on Execution Information, and this will show the steps of creating the virtual machine. This page refreshes about every 10 minutes, so you don't want to sit here and just watch it if you're waiting for your VM to be created. Hit the refresh button if needed, and then you'll hopefully get the success message that says that the VM was created, and it will have the VM name here. I called my first VM BLJ-prep. Yours will probably be your Bearcat ID and whatever else you want to call it. Okay, so when that is done, we can move on to the next step of our instructions. So let's go to Top Menu Items, then Left Side Menu and Machines. So Top Menu Items, Left Side Menu and Machines, and we see here is my virtual machine. Now on the right side there are several things that are going to be very handy throughout this course. First of all, connect to Remote Console. That's the one that we need the vast majority of the time. Connect using RDP and VMRC, those we're not going to use. But connect via Remote Console is what we're going to want to use all the time. Create Snapshot. This is probably one of my favorite parts of developing with virtual machines. I had my own metamorphosis probably back around, I'd say 2011, 2012, where I pushed off. I said, I don't want to use a virtual machine. I want to do everything on raw iron, right directly on my operating system on my laptop. Then I found that virtual machines are really, really handy if you need to duplicate an environment and you want all developers running using the same environment. Really great for that. The other thing I liked about virtual machines is the snapshot feature, where you can, I call it the Control Z of life. So essentially you take a snapshot of the virtual machine and it remembers everything that was on the hard drive at that time. It remembers the state of the virtual machine and the operating system at that time. At any time you can revert back to that snapshot. What I like about this is it gives you a chance to experiment. And I typically work with a lot of snapshots because I might say, gosh, I'm going to try to change the build script to do this, but I'm not quite certain it's going to work. So I'm going to take a snapshot of my VM, I'm going to play around, and then I'm going to use it if it works. If not, I'll revert back to snapshot. So I like that quite a bit, but the consequence is that snapshots do take up quite a bit of disk space because you're essentially taking that entire hard drive, the virtual hard drive, and essentially cloning it along with any other memory settings of the VM. So you're limited to one snapshot here. Just remember that you're limited to one. Destroy. Don't click that. That will destroy your VM. Install tools, don't worry about. That's already been done by your VM administrator. Mount CD-ROM is something, if we need to mount a CD, we can ask the VM administrators to mount one on a shared disk for us, and then we can mount that into our virtual machine using this option. Not something we're going to need to do this semester, so don't worry about that one, although you might need it for other classes, or we might find a good use for it. Power cycle is a hard reboot, so reboot without shutting things down. Power off is a hard power off. Reboot is a friendly reboot, so go ahead and shut everything off and then do the reboot. So let me skip down to shutdown. Shutdown and suspend, these are also friendly versions, so they're going to try to close any working programs, where power off is like holding down the power key or unplugging the power cord. So shutdown and suspend is a more traditional let everything close. Unmount CD-ROM naturally is the counterpart to mount CD-ROM. Reprovision. I wouldn't use this after about the first week of class. What this does is essentially take your virtual machine and bring it back to the initial state. It does, so in other words, where it was initially created, totally vanilla. It wipes out all of your work. So I would be cautious on using that after you've done any kind of work on your VM that you want to save. So one thing I will note though, because we're using these virtual machines, it makes grading for me and helping you very easy because I can just pop into your virtual machine. But we do want to use UC's GitHub to store our source code this semester, and our virtual machines are internet accessible. So they do have, so we can get out to GitHub. That'll make it really easy, especially for group projects as we're working together and as we're doing code reviews. So that's a little kind of information about the VM software itself. With that, let's go ahead and connect to our virtual machine. This assumes that we have requested the virtual machine, that it's been created, and that creation was successful. So number one, watch for pop-up blockers because this is going to make a pop-up happen. So either disable pop-up blockers for this site, or just watch, depending on your browser, watch up at the top for a pop-up blocker. I'm going to head and click connect to remote computer. Give that just a moment. And we see in my case what it did is it opened a new tab. It gives us some buttons up here at the top. Send Control-Alt-Delete. Here's the name of our virtual machine. I can just type in here. I will provide you the password on Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and type it in here. Super secret, super secure password. And you see now, right now what we have is essentially a vanilla operating system, and this gives us a point where we can start doing our work this semester. So, virtual machines, I mentioned I went through a bit of a metamorphosis around 2012 or so. After I started using them, I totally swear by them. Especially as a developer, if you want the ability to bring up another developer very quickly, maybe you're doing some pair programming, or maybe you have a new hire starting and you want to say, here's my environment, go forth. saves you quite a bit of time in configuration. But yeah, I also really like the snapshot feature. So this is something that we use in this course, and I bet you'll probably see in future courses, if you haven't already seen them in previous courses, and probably in your job. So with this combined with GitHub, it gives us the ability to do local programming. It gives us the ability to work with others in a group project, and it also gives me an ability to go in and help you out live, even if we're sitting in different locations, which is a great asset to have. So lots of great stuff. Looking forward to using this in the class. Thank you.